So, all right, let's get to Baylor. Mentioned them a little bit ago. 6-7 for Dave Aranda's Baylor Bears. 4-5 in the Big 12. It was a rough year for Baylor. 3 losses by 6 points or fewer. You ended the season with 3 straight losses, and you lose your bowl game to Air Force in the Armed Forces Bowl. Um, the Baylor Bears have one road game before their bye week in Week 7. They have a bit of a quarterback controversy with Blake Shapen and Sawyer
Mhm.
Robertson. You got to be able to run the football better. They rushed for almost 30 fewer yards a game last season. 4 of your 5 offensive linemen are gone to graduation or the transfer portal. Dave Aranda's Baylor Bears, the Big 12 champions in 2021, 6 wins in 2022. Again, we talk about can you sustain it? Baylor was not able to last year. What are your thoughts on the Bears heading into 2023?
Yeah, so I think with Baylor, one of the biggest things where they had their drop off, their offense actually improved slightly last year with Blake Shippen at quarterback. It was the defense, which was so good in 2021. It was a top 10 scoring defense. They fell to 68th last
Yeah,
year when they still had a lot of starters. The biggest thing was with their defensive line. They went from 44 sacks in 2021 only to where they only had 24 in
yep.
2022, and they lose their best defensive lineman from last year in Saaki Ika, who's off to the NFL. They do return their other 2 starters in TJ Franklin and Gabe Hall, but that's really the side of the ball that they really need to improve on. And Aranda did address that. He brought in Matt Powledge. He was the co-DC at Oregon last year to kind of change some things up. Reading about them, it sounds like Aranda finally has kind of the guys to run the type of defense he wants to run, where the last couple of years they were kind of mixing, matching what they did from the old regime. So that gives me hopeful. They have a really, really good linebacker group. I believe that all 3 starters are coming back from there. And they also brought in, good transfers on that side of the ball. Mike Smith from Liberty, who had 10 tackles for loss last year. And then I think offensively, I just trust Jeff Grimes, no matter who the quarterback is. I think Jeff Grimes is one of the more underrated offensive coordinators for what the job he did at BYU. And like I said, the last or 2 years ago when he took over that offense, it was one of the worst offenses in college football. And because of their progression was the big reason why they made it to the Big 12 title game. I think that will continue to improve. But like I said, biggest question for me is can that defense get back to some level of production like they were at in 2021?
Yeah, defense that ranks 58th in total defense, 62nd against the run, 69th in scoring defense. Like Lucas mentioned, 20 fewer sacks in 2022 as opposed to 2021. Interesting battle at quarterback. Blake Shapen over 2,700 yards through the air, 18 touchdowns, completed over 63% of his passes. Interesting to see if Sawyer Robertson will be able to push him. Richard Reese, they really like after a really nice freshman season, almost 1,000 yards, 14 touchdowns, is back. They also brought in running back transfer Dominique Richardson, over 500 yards last year at Oklahoma State. And like I mentioned earlier, a lot back on the offensive line. The Baylor Bears, only 4 true road games for the Bears in 2023. They are UCF, Cincinnati, Kansas State, TCU. The non-conference for the Bears, all 3 at home. They get Texas State, a big one against Utah in week 2, Long Island. After that, they have 5 home games in conference: Texas, Texas Tech, Iowa State, Houston, and West Virginia. One road game before their bye week in week 7. The over or under is 7.5. The over is plus. Under is minus 188, and I'm going to take the over. I think Baylor and Texas Tech are really intriguing. I think it wouldn't surprise me if split and Texas Tech's 8-4 and Baylor 6-6 or whatever it is. But I think the schedule sets up really nicely. You get Utah in week 2 coming off their game against Florida. I think that, I'm not gonna say that's winnable, but that's a game where I don't. And you get Texas at get in West Virginia and Iowa State. As we will get to later in the pod, the sports books are Kansas State, TCU as well. So I think 8-4 is pretty realistic for Dave Aranda. I think they can get back to running the football. They can get back
So, disagreement with us once again. I'm going under seven and a
surprising. You actually
half.
took an under. Actually, yes.
I thought when I first read this, I was going to take the over. The only thing that slightly scares me is I do think that running back room is really, really good. For Baylor, my only worry is their offensive line. They do lose four starters, all of which were on all Big 12 teams. So they have huge, huge shoes to fill. There could be some growing pains. And you look at those first four games, in those first four games, you got to play Utah and Texas, both of which could be potentially top 10 teams this season. If they just split those and they're 2-2, then you're looking and right before your bye, you got to play Texas Tech, which that might be a big game for us if we bet either one of these teams, Baylor and Texas
Yeah.
Tech, the way we want to. That could whoever wins that probably gets the over in their book, but I just worry really about that running the ball. But then again, if they can get back to that type of level of defense, they're going to be in just about every game that they play. But for right now, leaning towards taking the under 7.5.
Yeah, Baylor and Texas Tech, I think, are kind of the wild cards in this league. I think Texas Tech is getting a little bit more hype than Baylor after a good first season for Joy McGuire, and it almost feels like the Dave Aranda smell is kind of worn off after a New Year's Six appearance in 2021.